You don't have to read comics to love Thor Ragnarok, because director Taika Waititi and his crew have made such a genuinely fun movie. But for longtime Marvel Comics fans, it's even more special because of all the hidden goodies inside. Here are some of the small references in Thor Ragnarok that you might have missed, and of course, spoilers ahead. Immigrant Song. Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song is the perfect music to accompany a high-octane action sequence like the ones at the beginning and end of Thor Ragnarok. Even better, the lyrics fit perfectly. Robert Plant and Jimmy Page wrote the song after visiting Iceland and being impressed with its landscape and history, and the song's full of references to the same Scandinavian mythology upon which the Thor comics were based. The line, "The Hammer of the Gods," is a reference to Thor's hammer Mjolnir, and of course when Robert Plant croons about Valhalla, he's talking about the realm of the honored warriors who fell in battle. The Norse afterlife is left out of the Thor movies, but after the events of this one, Valhalla would be crowded with Asgardians. Korg and Miek. Korg is a Cronin, one of the stone men who are Thor's very first enemies in his debut appearance in the pages of Journey into Mystery, issue 83. Korg himself first appeared as an individual character in the Planet Hulk comic book story from 2006. That story also introduced Miek, a weird little insect creature who turns out to be surprisingly bloodthirsty. In the movie, Miek doesn't speak at all, and Korg, played by director Taika Waititi, is much more soft-spoken than he seems in the comic.
Pull me off the...
Oh my God, Hammer pulled you off.
The ground. It would pull me off the ground up into the air and I would fly.
They're fun characters, but if you only see the movie, you won't have a clue about Miek's original nature as a character, or Korg's long comic book history with Thor. He's a thing. Of course, Korg is far from the most famous rock man in Marvel Comics. That honor unquestionably goes to Ben Grimm, the Fantastic Four member better known as The Thing. The Thing has a long rivalry with the Hulk in the comics, but he can't appear in movies with them because of licensing agreements. That's why it's funny when Thor first meets Korg and takes him for a pile of rocks, and Korg replies saying, "I'm actually a thing, a being." For fans of Marvel Comics, there's only one image that pops into your head when a rock man introduces himself as a thing: this guy.
It's clobbering time, for real.
Point Break. To activate the voice recognition security system on the Quinjet, Thor has to refer to himself as Point Break, a callback to the nickname Tony Stark gave him in the Avengers.
No hard feelings, Point Break. You got a mean swing.
Before his haircut at Stan Lee's hands, Thor bore a pretty strong resemblance to Bodhi, the character Patrick Swayze plays in the 1991 film Point Break. Bannerless Hulk. Waking up as Bruce Banner after such a long time as the Hulk is understandably jarring, and it obviously has a negative impact on Banner's psyche. This sort of thing also happened in the comics a few times. During the Planet Hulk storyline, Banner rarely appears because the planet is so dangerous. The most famous Bannerless Hulk storyline, however, was published in 1988, The Incredible Hulk issue 347. Thanks to a wizard spell, the Hulk is freed of Banner, and gets a job working for the mob in Las Vegas. He even begins wearing tailored clothes in his own size rather than Banner's torn pants, and generally lives the high life. It's usually a mark of these Bannerless Hulk stories that the Hulk speaks more and acts more rationally the longer he stays himself, so it makes sense that he's relatively talkative in Ragnarok. Sokovia Forgotten. Who even remembers Sokovia? When Bruce Banner brings it up and asks what happened to the city, Thor doesn't even answer. He just points out that the battle with Ultron happened 2 years ago. Sure, at the time, seeing a city lifted into the sky by Ultron seemed like a huge earth-shaking deal. It played a part in the events of Captain America: Civil War, although even then, they barely followed up on what happened there after the battle. This exchange between Banner and Thor conveys how long Banner has been out of it. But Thor's reaction is also a bit of a joke about how little the huge action sequences that end each movie tend to matter once the credits roll. Fenris. Ragnarok doesn't explain much about Fenris the Wolf. He's treated mostly as an ally and mount for the death goddess Hela. Interestingly, in the comics and the Norse myths on which they're based, Hela and Fenris are actually straight-up siblings, and their father is none other than Loki. In the movie, Hela becomes Odin's daughter, and therefore Loki's adopted sister, while the wolf's origin is left completely unexplained. But the closeness between Hela and Fenris, and that green glow in his eyes, hints at their true relationship from the comics. Valkyrie's Digs. She may look a little different, but the character played by Tessa Thompson is very much the same Valkyrie who has appeared in Marvel Comics since the 1970s. Valkyrie's gold and silver armor and blue cape come directly from the comics, along with her sword, Dragonfang, and the flying horse. But more than anything, it's her characterization that makes her recognizable. Valkyrie is a swaggering, hard-drinking warrior woman who's worked hard to get away from a long and troubled past, before eventually making peace with it. Thor's Eye. When Thor loses an eye in battle with Hela and starts wearing an eye patch at the end of Thor Ragnarok, it's an obvious way of visually depicting his transition into his father's role as king of Asgard, since Odin was famously one-eyed as well. But it also resonates with a version of Thor from the comics who bore an even closer resemblance to Odin. King Thor, as he's often called, is a version of Thor from the future, who first appeared in Thor, God of Thunder, issue 1. Like so many things in Thor Ragnarok, it works perfectly well if you haven't read the comics, but if you have, it takes on even more meaning. Thanks for watching. Click the looper icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.